a lucky guy because for the past 15 years, I've been working with young people, helping them develop media creation skills and developing really strong relationships with media. And the one thing that has stood out to me the most throughout all of these amazing electric experiences has been that it only takes one time to trust a young person with a media tool to help them tell a story, for them to revolutionize the way they critique and consume media. These experiences just can build and build upon one another. And so I keep thinking to myself, why in an educational setting do we not trust our kids? And I think to answer that question, we have to kind of go back to our own situations as adults and as leaders. And we think about your job. I want you to think about your positions in life. And what does it take for you to trust kids? Sorry, what does it take for you to trust, period? Who do you trust? Why do you trust? Is it reputation? Is it referral? Is it a gut instinct? Is it an experience? Maybe you don't trust at all, and you have to think about why you don't. But if you really want to understand it, you have to go back even further. How old were you when someone finally trusted you? And I want you to actually interact with this and participate in this process. So raise your hand if you were a teenager when someone actually trusted you with something important. Cool. Early 20s? Late 20s? 30s? Are you still waiting? I'm sorry, I promise we will trust you by the end of this session, right? Why in the world would someone trust you? What do they need? Like, you must be thinking this when you finally get that job opportunity, you get something that happens, and you're like, oh my God, they gave it to me. Why? And I think it comes back to these types of situations. Like, someone important recommended you, you were really convincing, they saw something in you. Perhaps it was a skill or an experience that you had, or maybe they simply didn't have a choice. Me, personally, this is so true. I hated history in particular, which is really weird because I'm a history teacher, but I really hated school when I was a kid. It just didn't connect with me. I didn't connect with it. I knew it was important. They beat that into our brains over and over and over again. You gotta get an education so that you can get a job. But it just really didn't connect to me, and I don't think I was ever really trusted or empowered or given anything meaningful to do. They absolutely told us it was important, but they never showed us, and they never got us to feel that it was important. My dad, I don't want to throw him under the bus because he's a great guy, and he taught us a work ethic, and he made things happen, but this was his mantra, and this was regularly stated in our house anytime we would speak at the dinner table, specifically around family. And anytime I would ask questions in school and then get in trouble for asking those questions in school, it would come back to this. And it was just sort of like, okay, I think this is the underpinning flow and energy of school. We expect our students to sit there and take orders and then regurgitate and then move on. And then we kick that can down the road to the point of where we actually trust people to do stuff. This question came up many, many times in my life. And I remember back to my 16th birthday, and I was really pumped. My aunt and my uncle were taking me out, and it was this big moment, and they picked me up, and they take me, and they're like, we're taking me somewhere really special, and the anticipation is building and building, and I can't wait. They drive around the corner. This is out in Long Island. They take me to Nassau Coliseum, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to an Islanders game. I get to see some hockey finally. And they get me into the corner, and then I get what every 16-year-old boy wants in their life, an all-expenses paid trip to a college fair. They pull up at 10 a.m., they drop me off on the curb, and they're like, see you at 5. And then I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I go into this giant arena, table after table after table, college counselors asking me this question. So, what do you want to be when you grow up, son? And I literally stare back blankly. I have no idea what to say to them because I wasn't trusted prior, and I don't think I was given opportunities to really figure that answer out. Fast forward maybe a month or so after that epic Sweet 16 party, and I land a job as an assistant at a tuxedo store. Sounds pretty cool. And on day one, I find out what that means. Being an assistant at a tuxedo store means wearing a tuxedo outside said store and handing people flyers in traffic. It's exhilarating. It's probably the most amazing experience I've ever had, actually. But I didn't really want to stay in that position, so I argued with the manager and said, you gotta be kidding me, this is not what you sold me on. Nice sales pitch, but come on, deliver. And within 1 month, I was the manager of that store. My friends are flipping burgers and bagging groceries, experiences I've absolutely had on my own. But I have the keys to the store. I'm doing the inventory. I'm running the show. I'm even the tailor. I'm sewing tuxedo pants. Like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm 16 and I'm in charge of that. But I was in charge of the daily show. And this experience really told me that, forget my dream of being starting shortstop for the New York Yankees. Okay, fine. It's still in here, right? Maybe one day, right? But tuxedos. I mean, this is where it's at. All the ideas are spinning my brain. My own store, my own franchise, my own... Then I go to college. And it's more of the same. Sit in the row, take the test, take the class, move on, get the job, move on, move on, move on. No challenge, no true trust, no opportunity to do anything more. Most importantly, no tuxedo empire. I want to take a step back and think about this. How old do you feel right now? I feel 17, honestly. And it's because 17 years ago, I started making decisions for myself. Prior to that, I felt like all the decisions I was making were for someone else. They weren't really generating any type of trajectory for me. And it was this simple, method. It's go to school, get a part-time job, do extracurricular activities, get that to the point where you can get into a college, get a major, get a job, stay at that job long enough to find a spouse, buy a house, make some babies, wash, rinse, repeat. But I was also told that we're supposed to trust our hearts. But I asked my heart, and my heart said, if I know. And really, it wasn't until I left the country to kind of become the next great American novelist or figure out how to use a camera to change the world and all these lofty ideas that I started interacting with young people who were just so hungry and dying to be in school. This is what it looks like all over the world. And a lightning bolt went off in my mind, and I realized what it was. It was that they saw engagement, they saw empowerment, they saw that this was the way that the world was going to change for them. This was their way out. Education actually meant something to them, even though at the time it was singing ABC songs. This was different than what I experienced. It's the 20th century. Back when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. Cameras cost thousands of dollars, and you legitimately needed to know somebody to get ahead. But times have changed. Information's everywhere. Technology is 2 times faster and half the cost every year. And now it's all about access and trust. So why are we not trusting kids? Why don't we let them start their path to their future sooner? What are we waiting for? What are we held up by? I'm a firm believer in needing something more than a slick sales pitch to convince people to buy in, to build a community, to build a movement. But it normally does come back to one individual taking a shot, taking a leap of faith on you. And back in 2010, David Bill, a friend now, but at the time just some guy I met at the EduCon conference that we host every year, he had a TED Talk that was going to happen. And he had a budget of $50,000, and he needed to connect in New York City. I was like, well, hell, we could do it for half of that. His eyes grew really wide, and he was like, who is we? And Rough Cut Productions was born, a media production company built by Philly kids for Philly kids who will trust Philly kids to be the next media producers of the world. It was unbelievable. So 6 weeks later, we're on our way up the New Jersey Turnpike with 7 kids, $500,000 worth of rented equipment, and a dream. We have no idea how this is going to go down. We've never done something like this before, but we are on our way up there to produce a TED Talk just like this. 15-year-olds and their teachers. Halfway through, we're talking at a break, and I overhear a guy talking on a phone with his friend in Amsterdam, and the guy in Amsterdam is like, yo, this is like the greatest TED Talk live stream ever. And I'm like feeling good inside because the guy on the phone is like, yeah, and the coolest thing, it's a bunch of 5-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and their teachers. It's like ridiculous. It's like the most unbelievable thing ever. These 7 kids who did this project with us, they were so visible making their media through the course of that school year that everybody decided to sign up for this. 36 kids the next year, 200 the year after that, 200 after that. And now, after 8 years, over 1,000 students have gone through our programming at Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia. It has now expanded outside of that one school. It's about that evidence. The students in the school needed it, and they need it now. But it's not just about the students who go on to be at USC and NYU and all these major film programs like Emerson and Pratt and Temple Film and this little school called Penn State. It's also the kids who decide to go study nutrition and public speaking and public relations and social work. They come back and they say that the program that they participated in changed their lives. It modified who they were, and it gave them agency, and it told them that it didn't matter their age or their class standing. It would never hold them back because they knew that they could actually communicate their ideas and their passions. In 2013, the doomsday budget, which some of you in Pennsylvania would know about, was this austerity measure that was going to cripple the budgets of schools throughout Philadelphia and abroad. And we lost teachers, myself included. Education counselors and librarians were seen as non-essential. It was just devastating art programming everywhere. So in this capacity, we had to get creative about how we were going to keep our program alive. Now, we had to figure out funding to keep the thing going, but at the same time, we couldn't ignore our students. And every time, all they kept asking for was, why don't we have a photography program? So we built one. 5 kids, 75 cameras. I got that backwards. It's 5 students. The project that they created and the content that they produced led to hanging by a shoestring, what we see, what we are, I am not the same anymore. These photo programs and these exhibitions just exploded through Philadelphia, and the outside public realized what was happening was really, really special. David Bill and his TEDx team was just the beginning. Individuals, foundations, corporations, they just started coming to us. They were finding us. We weren't looking for them anymore. They wanted to be part of this movement. They wanted to trust kids, and they wanted to show that they were part of something that was different. 8 years later, we have our own media umbrella over this little empire. So no tuxedos, but now cameras, right? So now we have Rough Cut Media, which produces content and hosts its own film festival year in and year out. It showcases the work of university, high school, independent, and now professional filmmakers. It has created a vertically aligned community that ensures that a young person can actually touch someone who's doing it for the real deal in the professional world. And now when students ask, or someone asks, what does it look like when you trust a kid? All I have to do is hit play. The next version of this film festival happens in May of this year. This is all built by students. I was the only adult until maybe last year, the only adult involved in this process. Now our former students are actually adults, and some of them are in the room today. And they're going to be involved in the next phase of what we're creating, because they're going to be the teachers as well. In my classes, I always ask 3 questions of our students before they make a piece of media. What do you want us to feel? What do you want us to learn? And how are you going to move us to action? Now, this always works really well in photography and video and even history, but this is really about society. It's about how do we engage and empower our citizens? How do you create that community that's going to actualize a mission? And we've seen this evidence all over the world in the refugee camp works that we do. This one boy is, after one day of learning some basic composition and photography, you can see him thinking before he uses that tool. In these places, people don't have a choice. The young people are doing all the heavy lifting. But they actually want the same opportunities that the people in these seats have. They want more than learning their ABCs when they're 15 years old. There's a great program in the camps in Bangladesh where the Rohingya have fled ethnic violence in Myanmar and are now inside Bangladesh, and there's almost over 1 million people there waiting, still stateless. And these young people, they just want access and trust. And a group called All Bad Helpers, which has created the humanitarian assistance program that we work very closely with, they've done just that. They hire the Rohingya themselves, the ones that were born in the camps and who had not the opportunity to even go to school. They're the medical specialists. They're the translators. They're the community specialists. They're the ones who are ensuring that this community is built from the ground up. And we ask ourselves the same question repeatedly, and we evolve, and we keep moving forward. And starting on Tuesday, Fresh Focus is born. It's a partnership with Fresh Artists, which is an amazing organization that brings art supplies into underserved schools, and Rough Cut Media is going to partner up, and a lot of the people in the seats over here are going to be the teachers who are going to be teaching 7th and 8th graders how to show the world what Camden, New Jersey, one of the poorest small cities in America, looks like through their eyes. So kids can do this work. And that's the model for what we're going to do overseas in camps across the globe. So when we trust kids, it's not just a slick slogan. It's something that you can live and breathe on a daily basis. So I want you to walk out of here thinking about how your individual roles and your capacities in your communities and your industries can start shifting the conversation to how we can start trusting youth earlier, how we can increase the tools and access to experiences that are truly meaningful, and how you can actually validate a kid just by listening to them. Give a kid a camera. Give a kid a mic. Give a kid a 3D printer. Hell, just give a kid a seat at the table of decision. Give a kid your ear. Because from these small rural towns to these abandoned inner cities to these refugee camps, our world is overflowing with youth who just want access and trust. They just want a chance at something more than they were starting with. And their chance hinges on our trust. Thank you.